Welcome to Law Subscribed. This is your dedicated news source for all things subscriptions and the law. My name is Matthew Kurbis. I'm the subscription attorney, and I believe subscriptions can help bridge the access to justice gap and incentivize attorneys to modernize and scale their practice like never before. In this episode, I interview Daissy Dominguez. Daissy is a lawyer and the founder of the Dominguez Legal Justice Center. She is yet another alum from the Chicago Bar Foundation's Justice Entrepreneurs Project I'm having on this podcast. She's not only innovative in using subscriptions and flat fees, but she also markets her firm using unique methods that also help the communities she serves. Thank you to my sponsors, 650 and Gavel. Links to both in the show notes and more on them later. You could sign up for the waitlist while it's still a waitlist for my subscription seminar at subscriptionseminar.com. The waitlist is almost up because later this month I'll be announcing the prices in the first cohort. This podcast is finally getting more traction, so please rate and review it if you haven't already to help others discover the show. And as always, please share it with somebody that you know. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing said is legal, ethical, or financial advice. Without further delay, here's the episode. Daissy Dominguez, thank you so much. After almost a year, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast Law Subscribed. Thanks for coming. Please introduce yourself to my listeners.
Thank you so much, Matthew, for having me. Hi, guys. My name is Daissy Dominguez. I am the founder of Dominguez Legal Justice Center, which I started back in 2013. So this year I will be celebrating 10 years with the practice. It's a very fun and exciting year coming up.
So excited to have you here, and this will even go live a little bit later in like the summer, so it'll probably be closer to that actual 10-year anniversary, which is really exciting. But let's go back then. So 2013, what got you started? Why did you start your own firm?
You know, I actually never considered starting my own practice when I was in law school. My original plan was to work with legal aid organizations and really serve low and moderate income communities. And I didn't see myself in big law or working at a law firm. But when I was graduating at the time, legal aid, unfortunately, wasn't having many job opportunities. And the opportunities they have were more of like fellowships with the very, very low pay and just temporary for a year, maybe two. And so around that time, I had a really amazing mentor who actually shared with me a program called the Justice Entrepreneurs Project through the Chicago Bar Foundation. So I read about their mission and the work that they were trying to do, and I felt like that really connected with what I was trying to accomplish, but within legal aid. And so it gave me another alternative of thinking outside the box, of developing my own private practice, but with the mission of serving low and moderate income communities. So when I saw that it could be possible to have my own practice and also do the work I would be wanting to do in legal aid and also serving the communities I wanted to serve, I just got really excited thinking of the endless possibilities of what I could accomplish on my own with my own business. And so part of the program of the application required you to do a personal statement and explain to them what would your firm look like. And so that's when I started to think of the different initiatives that I could do. And then that just made me realize how much freedom I had to be able to create anything that I wanted to create. And so that's really what got me excited, as I thought the endless possibilities of being able to help others, right? Whereas with legal aid, I would be limited on depending on what funding we're getting, depending on my supervisor, depending on, the organization and their missions, on what I could actually do or even have the time to do, right? Outside of the business hours, if I would have time to do anything else of my own. And having my own practice, I thought I could just go ahead and do it. And I could make the most impact, right? With my skills and through the business, I felt like I just had more of an opportunity to make an impact in the community. And so that really got me excited. And because of that program and because of the support that they were going to provide, I. Just going to start my own business all on my own without even knowing anything, because I did it right out of law school. So all I knew was the law that you learn in law school. They don't teach you the business side. And so I was a little nervous I don't know, I've never gone to business school. I don't know anything about, starting a business. And so the program really gave me that confidence that with them and their supports, I could still do this right out of law school. And I did.
Oh my gosh, Daisy, you gave me so much stuff for conversations and follow-up questions to ask. But even before I get back to that, let's skip to the end. So it's been almost 10 years. Has it worked? Like, have you been happy, and have you been able to do what you wanted to do from that first, mission statement, that personal statement that
Mhm.
you had to write? Like, looking back, did you do it? Are you still doing it?
Yes, I'm so happy, honestly. Like, I think this was the best decision I made was to start my own practice because it allowed me again that flexibility to also mold my professional growth and career in however I feel is necessary for me to be happy in my profession. And so 10 years later, I'm very happy with what I've done. And over the 10 years, I've been able to adapt my practice to the different changes in the community. And so I primarily work in immigration law. So during the periods of the Trump administration, I was doing a lot of advocacy work and know your
Hmm.
rights workshops and things like that to like adapt to what was going on with immigration at that time. And so that's one of the things I love too about my practice is being able to adapt my this and the work that I do in the community to what is actually needed at that time period. So I don't regret it. I don't think I would have been where I am right now had it not been for me starting my practice through the JEP program.
Yeah, and so at least like now there's a lot more data and research and articles on like the latent legal market, right? And like these communities where they don't qualify for legal aid, but they can't afford traditionally priced attorneys. And so
Yes.
that's what you're able to serve as an entrepreneur and an attorney with their own firm. So like was that part of what you learned at JEP, or was like latent legal market
Yes.
and terms like that, were those even around at that time?
Yeah, I mean, over the last 10 years, so much information has been available. Even the program itself has grown so much to what they had available at the time when I started it 10 years ago. And I really, and what really drew me to the program and starting my own firm was that ability to have control over the way that I structure my fees and how that control and ability allows me to give people opportunities who otherwise would not have had access to the legal system, right? I'm
Hmm.
able to kind of dictate how I want to structure my fees and be flexible on a case by case basis, even, right? So that way, even clients who are not able to seek services through traditional law firms because it's just too high billable hours or aren't able to find free resources through legal aid, they're kind of left in the middle without any support or having to do it on their own or not even being able to seek immigration relief because they don't know how or where to go. So I'm able to really help that middle group of individuals are either who are struggling to be able to find an attorney and really give them the opportunity to obtain, immigration relief and be able to have lawful status to stay here in the country.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, everything you're talking about, like, it makes me think, like, so you wanted to be that access to justice, attorney, that pro bono, or not the pro bono necessarily, but like that legal aid attorney when you got started, and yet, here you are, running a law firm and being able to be in control of your own destiny. And when we talk about access to justice, we think about it in terms sometimes just the default is legal aid or pro bono, but
Yeah,
but access to justice is also just serving people with legal services who otherwise couldn't get it, right? And so like
right,
you
exactly.
you're doing it, like you're an example of that. And so so let's talk about like your approach to pricing and how it's it's you use alternative fee arrangements. Was that something that you workshopped with JEP? Was that something you found out on your own?
Mhm.
Like what was your light bulb moment, if there was one, that led you to charging the way you charge?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that drew me to the JP program was that their mission of serving low and moderate income communities and being able to do that by, being creative with our fees. Now, at the time before I joined the program, I didn't really know what that meant, but I figured I'd learn more about it to be able to get their support to figure out how can I be creative with my fees while also being a sustainable practice, right? And I figured the program could give me that insight and I can learn from the program on how to be able to do that. And so through JP, It was an 18-month program. And during those 18 months, we did weekly meetings and workshops to learn all the different aspects of developing the business. And one of those workshops was discussing how can we unbundle services, how can we do flat fees instead of billable hours, and thinking outside the box with that, right? And so I got those ideas of flat fees and unbundling through the program, but then I kind of molded it into just how I felt like it would work for my practice and then on a case by case basis. So what I ended up doing with my practice was, first off, I decided all cases were going to be flat fees. So there is no billable hours in my agreements. And then from those flat fees, I determine it on a case by case basis. So if a client has very, very limited financial resources, then we can discuss maybe doing an unbundling service where I can do part of the legal work that they absolutely don't know or couldn't do. And then I can guide them into the other work that they could be able to do. And then we both kind of work together to put together a full case, right, between their work and my unbundled services, to be able to provide them that support if they have very limited financial resources. Another option is I'll handle the full case, but I will break apart the flat fee into monthly payments. And those monthly payments will vary depending on how long we're working on cases. So some monthly payments can be as short as 3 to 6 months. Some monthly payments can be as long as a year to 2 years, depending on the length of time that the case requires. So I kind of estimate the monthly payment plans based off of the case and also the client's ability to pay, right? Sometimes they really do have very limited resources, but they need the full service. And so we will just work on that case over a longer period of time to be able to provide them smaller monthly payment plans that are more accessible to them. And then I also take into consideration their income, right? Like, where do they fall, above or below the poverty guidelines, to try to see how I want to structure those fees. Do I charge them regular rates, or do I try to go under the regular rates, or, like kind of figure out where they are there to also see what is really financially accessible to them. So I kind of play around with those different ways of structuring my fees, and it's really custom during each case consultation. So during the consultation is when I gather some of that information to try to provide them with options of payments and different arrangements that we can do to be flexible with the fees.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I want to do a little bit of a deep dive on those fees, but even before we get there, just to provide a little bit more context to my listeners, I don't actually think I've had anyone define unbundled services. So in Illinois, we allow it. I know in Colorado, they allow it. In several states, they're allowing it. How, like, when you're explaining it to like a client, like, how do you explain what unbundled services are?
Yeah, so I'll explain that there's a full case representation where I handle every aspect of the case, but then there's also different tasks within that case that they can also do. So for example, sworn statements, I can give them just guiding questions that they can use to be able to make their own sworn affidavit, right? If it's the forms that we have to fill out and they're not sure how to fill those out, then that's services that I can provide. So I'll kind of break out all the different steps that the case requires, and then I'll indicate, okay, this you can do, this you probably need me. And then that's how we're able to distinguish what is the client part of the case that they're doing and what is the attorney doing in their case. And then in the agreements, then I indicate what are the different services that I'm providing, and then what is it that I'm just guiding them. And then another service is if they just want me to review, if they want to do it pro bono, I mean on their own, pro se, and they would just want me to review, then I can also offer that service where they'll prepare their case and then I'll review it and give them feedback to make sure that when they're doing a pro se, they're doing it correctly still.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And one more question I want to ask before I forget is, like, did you learn the business of law through JEP, or did you also have to do like additional learning to learn like how to run a business? And if so, what did you use and where did you learn it?
Oh no, everything that I learned in terms of running my practice was basically through the JEP program.
Yeah, okay. So just want to let my listeners know that like incubator programs like this, there are a lot more of them now than there were in 2013. And the ABA even has a list of them, which I can link to in the show notes. Because yeah, I get that question. Where do I learn the business of law? And then are you a true solo or do you use
Yes.
staff? Okay, so true solo. Have you always been a true solo?
Yes, but I'm actually in the process of expanding. So I've had paralegal interns throughout the different semesters always, but in terms of actually having employees, it's just been me for now. And then I outsource certain things. Like I'll have co-counsels, individuals that will help me like just on a case by case basis. But
Mm-hmm.
in terms of actually full or part-time employees with the business, no.
Okay, so like have you ever used like law clerk for freelance lawyers, like that kind of thing, or do you just find your own?
No, I find my own. So normally I'm a member of AILA, which is a national immigration organization. And so through AILA, I've connected with other attorneys that are also immigration attorneys and my own colleagues as well, who I've known from school that are also practicing in immigration. I'll reach out and through the JP program. So we also have other immigration attorneys in the JP program. So through my networks, I reach out to certain colleagues to see who's available to either help me as co-counsel or help me just on certain projects of a case. And then that's how I've been outsourcing some of the work instead of having a full-time or a part-time employee for now. But now
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping now that I'm hitting the 10-year mark to start expanding the firm and bringing on employees, bringing on a paralegal assistant, and an actual attorney.
Wow, wow. Well, congratulations. That's a big step. So have you looked into like virtual assistants too? Those seem to be all the rage these days. Is that something you've
Yeah,
considered?
I'm actually looking into that right now. I was at the ABA Tech Show, and so I connected with a couple of the virtual assistant companies there. And so I'm going to be doing a couple of demos to see which one's a good fit for me and consider that. I've talked to a couple of my colleagues, and different people have different opinions on how well it will work having a virtual assistant versus just hiring your own part-time employee. And so I'm going to explore both options and see what works best.
Yeah, I spoke to an attorney at Tech Show who is using a virtual assistant who is a solo, and they said that like they have Latin America roots, and so the VA that they work with is in Latin America, and so they like
That's
being able.
actually one of the
Yeah.
that's one of the ones I'm looking into. I think it's called Latino or Latin virtual assistant, and they were at the ABA Tech Show, and so I wanted to connect with them because 95% of my clients are Spanish speaking, and so I really needed my virtual assistant to certainly be bilingual and primarily speaking in Spanish.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to entice all the attorneys listening in who are still working for other law firms and are thinking about also going solo, you're working from Peru this whole month of March.
Yes.
So that's exciting. How are you able to manage that?
Oh, yeah. It was at first I thought I don't even know if it's gonna be possible, but honestly, during the pandemic, a lot of the ways that we work and interact with clients shifted, right? To being able to be more remote. And so these 2 years during the pandemic, I've been really trying to build my practice around working remotely so that it will allow me to be able to travel abroad and work remotely as well. And so right now, I mean, I have a company that answers my calls. So even if I were to have service issues with my phone line, I'm never missing a call because the all the calls get forwarded to the answering company, and they quickly send me emails and let me know of all the incoming calls that are coming in. So that's one thing I wanted to make sure I had in place whenever I go abroad. And so I use Lex Reception. They've
Mm-hmm.
been pretty good with sending me all the messages and the incoming calls. And then at the actual office. So right now I do have a paralegal intern. And so he's going into the office to manage all the incoming mail. And because with USCIS and immigration, they still everything is paper. And so they mail us everything. So I definitely need to be able to have somebody monitoring my mail. And so right now my paralegal intern is handling all the incoming mail and scanning and emailing all of that to me. So I'm up to date with all the mail that's coming in. And then what I did in terms of preparation for Peru is I kind of went through all my cases and saw which ones are pretty close to finishing. all of those cases I wrapped up last month and had all my final meetings and advised all the clients, I'm going to be gone for a month. If you want your case filed before I leave, then we need to get all this work done within this month. So I told them a month ahead.
Hmm.
So we were able to get a lot of those cases filed. And that allowed me to be able to come and not be worried about any in-person meetings. Because unfortunately with USCIS, we don't do they still don't accept electronic signatures. It has to be wet signatures, but it can be scanned. And so what I'm doing this month is I'm working on all the casework. So when I go back next month, then all the cases I've worked on this month, I'm going back next month and I can just meet with them to finalize everything and have our final in-person meeting. So normally during the week, what I do is twice a week, I meet with clients in person for all of the signatures and document review in that. And then the other 3 days of the week, I'm working on just the casework in preparation for those meetings. So I'm going to do a similar model, but I'm going to do it in a monthly scale now, so I'm going to be doing a whole month. Instead of it being a day of the week that I'm working on cases, I'm going to do a whole month of just working on cases.
Hmm.
And then the following month, I'll do all the in-person meetings. So I can go back and forth between abroad and in person. So I'm kind of expanding that weekly concept into a monthly concept now. And I think that that's going to work really well in terms of being efficient with getting my casework, because now I'm abroad and I'm not going to be interrupted by in-person meetings. I could get so much more casework done during that month and then wrap everything up the following month. But right now, I'm just doing any Zoom meetings. So any meetings that don't require signatures, I'm still hosting those meetings via Zoom.
Well, you mentioned that dirty word in the billable hour arena, efficiency. You don't want to be
Yes,
you don't want to be efficient if you're billing by the hour, but when you're using alternative fee arrangements, it's an absolute must. And then
exactly.
yeah, yeah. And for those listening and you're not an immigration attorney and you've never worked with it, USCIS, that is U.S. Citizens and Immigration Services, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I know we have so many acronyms in this profession.
And I forget to explain that because it's just in my natural language to say these things and thinking that everybody knows what that means.
No,
So
that's okay.
thanks.
That's my job as host. So that now let's get back into like the way that you're pricing it, because that's like that's so much of what we cover here on Law Subscribed. And I don't do immigration work. I've never done it. When you're working with USCIS, is that something that like is like court related? Do you do any court related immigration work? Like, is there like
Hmm.
that this case is going to be 3, 6 months or 1 to 2 years? Like that before you get started, or how does the timing
Yes.
work for that?
Yes. So USCIS, that you mainly work, 95% of immigration attorneys are working with USCIS because that's where all of the petitions are filed with for the most part. And so I'm constantly working with USCIS. All of that is forms and petitions and packets. I do immigration court as well with deportation cases. So cases that are deportation, we also call it removal cases. That's all in courts. Now, for those type of cases, I only do about 10% of my cases are deportation related because it's so time consuming. But in regards to court appearances, unfortunately, with immigration, there's just so many people in deportation proceedings that if you go to court for your first, hearing, you won't go back to court until maybe 2 years, 3 years later will be your next hearing because there's just no availability on the calendars since there's so many people in court right now. So even if I did have more deportation cases, I still wouldn't be in physical court as often because of the how long these cases will take from beginning to end. And then with regards to USCIS, I am able to see how long these cases are taking to process because USCIS has their processing times online. So I can quickly see online, depending on what case it is, how long it's taking to process. And that also gives me an idea of how long I will be working on this case from the minute that I file it to the minute that we get a decision. To also keep in mind when I'm structuring my fees that if this is a case that's being processed for a long time, I can be flexible as well with the way I arrange my fees because I'll be working with the client for some time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's go even more into the fees. So the way that you design your billing process is you know what the total amount of flat fee is, and then you just divide it by the amount of time that it's going to be, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
total amount your client is going to pay? Or is it
Mm-hmm.
a potential that if it goes longer, that flat monthly fee will continue past an expected deadline, or once they've hit their total payment limit, they're all paid up? Like, how does that work? When I went solo, I pivoted from mostly litigation to a transactional-only practice. I did not have a database of documents to automate. That's why a business and employment legal document database and automation tool like 650 is super useful. I can rely on the quality of the documents in 650's database since they're putting excellent legal minds to work curating and updating their documents and automations over time. When you're not billing by the hour, outsourcing and efficiency matters, and 650 can help you scale your practice to get high-quality documents drafted in less time. Use the code LAWSubscribed at 650.com and when being onboarded to get 10% off. If you're not a business and employment attorney, or you have your own documents that you'd prefer to use, then my next sponsor, Gavel, is the automation tool for you. Gavel allows you to build shareable, client-facing workflow and document automations. In other words, Gavel helps you create a legal practice where attorneys can monetize the value they bring clients in productized form at scale via subscriptions and flat fees. Use the code LAWSubscribed at gavel.io to get 10% off an annual subscription. There's no one right way to automate and scale your practice, but with one or both of my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, you can take your subscription law firm to the next level. Links to both in the show notes. Now back to the show.
Yeah, so the good thing about being an immigration attorney and working with USCIS is that you know all of the requirements for the petitions that we filed, right? So I know if I'm going to do a family petition, I know, and then depending on my consultation with them and the specific issues that they may have that might require a bit more work, I'm able to know during the consultation how much work I'm really going to be spending on these cases to assess the total fee of the case from beginning, which is from when I start working with a client to the minute that I file. So my flat fee is all of that work, all the preparation from beginning to when I file. After I file, there's not much work left for me to do other than monitoring the notices, updating the client, and then waiting for the decision from USCIS. And so I normally don't charge for those additional times because it's very minimal. And I just kind of include it as part of the total flat fee. Now, what I do put in my agreements that if there is additional work after the fact, because at times what can happen is immigration will ask us for more evidence. So they issue something called an RFE, request for further evidence. And so if they issue an RFE, then I indicate in my agreements that the RFE fee will be additional and it will depend on what that request is. Sometimes immigration will say, we just want another copy of a birth certificate or another copy of a passport or something simple that's a quick copy. I'll usually won't charge clients for just quick copies, and I'll just tell them that's part of the original fee. But if they're saying, we want more evidence of the validity of the marriage you are filing, then depending on the client's situation, if I know that this is a marriage-based case that's very difficult and challenging, I know I'm going to need to gather much more evidence for that. Then I try to assess how much time is it really going to take me to respond to this specific RFP. And then I'll quote the client and I'll let the client know this is the fee for the RFP. And then they decide if they want me to do that or if they just want me to explain to them how they can do it on their own to respond. Or they can also work with another attorney in response to the RFP. So it doesn't always have to be me who's responding to that. Another attorney can also take just that one service and file that with USCIS in response. So I am clear with clients that any other RFPs that are requested, that those will be assessed on a case-by-case basis. And then if, God forbid, the case is denied, well, then we'll probably need to file either a motion or an appeal. And depending on which of those we're doing, then that's an additional service. And those are the only things that I will charge additional for after that flat fee. So for the most part, most of my cases, thankfully, I'm very thorough with the way I work on my cases that it's rare when I get RFEs or things like that. So for the most part, most of my clients, the flat fee that I provide to them, that is the only thing that they're paying for, and there's no surprises with additional fees in the future.
And so like if and let's just do like a round number here. Let's say it's one of those 3-month cases. The work is going to be, let's say $1,500. It's $500 a month, and like
Hmm.
that's it. It's you don't set it up so that there's a little bit more in the beginning or a little bit more at the end. You make it an even amount for every single month.
Yeah. So for me, all deposits are typically $500.
Hmm.
$500 is the deposit, unless it's a deportation case, and those cases require a higher deposit. But for the most part, most deposits start at 500, and then the balance is then divided into however long we're working on the case to provide them with their monthly fees. But for the most part, I want to say on average, most of my monthly installments are about $500 a month.
Okay. And then is that something that's earned upon receipt, or does it go in your trust fund for a month and then it transfers over? How are you handling that?
No, it's earned upon receipt.
Okay. Yeah,
And
that
so
would.
I don't have an IOTA. I for flat fees, actually, I was at we had an ALove conference just last week, and they were informing us that if we are flat fee, like if our agreements are flat fee, then we're not supposed to put those flat fees in our IOTA account. The IOTA account is only for if, let's say, if clients are giving us the funds to pay the USCIS fees, then that's not our money, right? So we have to put that money into an IOTA account. But for my practice, what I do is I don't pay the USCIS fees on behalf of the client. The client pays those fees directly themselves. So all they're providing to me is my flat fee, and that's how I kind of avoid having the requirements of having an IOTA account.
Got it. Yeah, I for the longest time after I went solo, I avoided having an IOLTA account because I don't touch client funds typically ever either. But then a situation arose where it made sense for me to open one, and so I kind of had to do it. um,
Mhm. I still have an IOTA account there just in case I ever need it. I'm not having trying to have one. I have it there, but I've never had to actually use it. And I know some attorneys that during the conference were saying that they put some of the funds that they haven't fully earned in the IOTA, but they were talking about no, if you are a flat fee immigration attorney, then actually that's not what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to put it in the IOTA account.
Right, right. Yeah, it's really something. So a story that I like to tell, Daisy, is when when I'm talking to attorneys off podcast, or like maybe for like intro meetings, if they think they might be a good fit for Law Subscribed, is I always tell them the story of when we first met, where we were introduced
Mhm.
Jess Bednars, who's been on the show, and she used to run the JEP program. And she introduced us because she thought maybe you had the subscription model. And when we met, you were like, I don't think I offer the subscription model. I break up a flat fee and I just charge my clients a flat fee every single month. And I was like, that's the subscription model. And
Yeah.
and so, like the way that I see it is that is the subscription model, right? The way you're tackling it though, now we've seen, your process, or we've listened to your process for how you've set that up. I mean, you are coming at it even much more from a flat fee perspective than like a subscription model perspective, because you have set end times or set end events for all of your clients, right? I mean, that's like,
Hmm.
at some point representation will end, and
Yes.
there's no reason for them to continue to have your services, right?
Now, I will say this. I'm starting to think of another subscription idea, and I'll share with you in a minute. But yes, to your point, I called it payment plans, right? And essentially, payment plans is the subscription model. But just in my mind, that's just the term that I use. So I feel like if anyone's using payment plan options, then you are essentially doing subscription.
And,
So
and
that was also eye-opening to me. I was surprised. I was like, oh wait. So I guess I'm just calling it differently.
Right, and that matters from like a branding perspective too, is how do you want to
Yeah.
sell, what you're doing, right? And I could see why, and there's no one right way to do it. This is why I love doing the podcast, is because you learn all the different ways people are doing it. And you're only the second immigration attorney we've had on. We've had on Kim Felton, who's out of New Jersey, and she's doing a lot of document automation, unbundled, like help where she doesn't even sometimes even touch the work. Like she just provides resources, right? And she offers a subscription for that.
Great.
So
Uh-huh.
I'm people tell me, oh, you can't do it for family law, you can't do it for immigration. I was like, well, you should really listen to my podcast because there are attorneys
I
who are
think it
are
can be
doing it.
applicable in all areas of law if you're creative and kind of see how it is that you're working to make it work for you.
Right, right. So speaking of creativity, though, tell us, what is this new thing you're thinking about with the subscription model?
Yeah, so it just started coming to me recently because there are certain immigration cases that I can work with a client over a long period of time on just helping them get from the initial stage of having either a visa or a green card to ultimately becoming citizens, right? So the one that I'm thinking in particular is related to the U visa. So U visa is a visa given for victims of crimes. And one of the things that I really focused on early in my career is this niche of working with victims of crimes because I really wanted to support victims and help them, turn a negative into a positive. And so a lot of my initial cases were U visas. And so my clients that I've worked with the U visa, unfortunately with the U visa, it's a very long process because the government only provides 10,000 U visas a year nationwide. And so once those 10,000 visas are issued, then the person has to wait. So now, because there's so many, unfortunately, so many victims of crimes who are immigrants filing these petitions, the number of the waiting period has gone up. It used to be when I started maybe a year or two. Right now, they're waiting almost 5 years for their U visa. So I could be working with this client for a course of 5 years until they actually get the U visa approved. Then after they get the U visa approved, they're given the visa for 4 years. Before the visa expires, they have to apply for their green card because unfortunately, this visa you can't renew. And so typically the green card process is a lot more expensive than the U visa process. And for the most part, a lot of legal aid organizations do offer pro bono services for U visas, but will not offer it once it gets to the green card process. So now you have a lot of individuals that maybe got help from legal aid in the first case, but didn't get help, what now are doing their green card. And now the process for the green card is so expensive, right? And then especially for families who the U visa allows you to petition for spouses and minor children. Sometimes it's a family of 4 or 5, right? Now imagine 4 or 5 people now having to apply for green cards. That can be very expensive for a family. And so what I'm trying to do is for my clients who I've helped with the U visa, as soon as we have the U visa approved, we have 3 or 4 years until they have to do their green card. So I'm thinking we could do a subscription, right, of 3 or 4 years where they're probably paying $100 or $200 a month over the course of 2 or 4 years, and that will be much more accessible to the family, especially if they're larger families. That as soon as we're done, we still continue the representation, but now I won't actually do the work until the 3rd year because there are certain things I cannot do until they reach a certain time period. But at least they can start having their payment plan starting right after they have their U visa approved. And it's a lot more financially accessible to them if it's, $100, $200 a month versus $500 or more for multiple people. Right. And
Right.
so that's been one of the things that I've been exploring right now because a lot of my clients that I started on early on in my career are now in this next stage of the green card process. And many of them are usually families of at least 2 to 4 applicants. And now we have to do one petition for each one. And that's when it really becomes challenging for them. So that's where I started getting the idea of maybe just continuing the representation right after their U visa is approved and making it more smaller, the payments for larger families.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, and that's sort of what was coming to my mind for the other representation that you're doing too, because you said, you don't charge for the stuff afterwards because it's not a lot of work, but maybe there is a number that would make sense that your clients would be willing to and able to pay to like be there so they could contact you and ask questions, so that you
Mm-hmm.
could reach out, right? Even if it's something like my subscription start at $20 a month. And that's just access to scheduled 15-minute calls with me on my calendar, below market flat fee services. and access to my knowledge base, right? And so
Hmm.
I
I
wonder.
usually do that for free.
Yeah, but but maybe,
Yeah.
but even what you're doing for free, Daisy, has value, and
Yes.
it does, and
Yeah.
maybe you factor that into the cost of your flat fee service, and that's fine for you. But I think you might be surprised is what they might be willing to pay.
So,
It's like, so it's $500 a month until this point, and once this decision is made, or once we get this thing back, then it goes down to $100 a month or $50 a month or something until this
mhm.
period is reached, and then it's over.
So I was thinking about that in terms of my next goal too, right? So I mean, because normally right now I'm always available to my clients for any other questions outside of what we're doing because I like to take a holistic representation approach where I also consider what are the issues is my client facing that is also affecting like their ability to also even focus on the case that we're doing, right? Are they having issues finding employment? Are they having, issues with emotional trauma that they've had that they need counseling services? And so I usually talk to them about just their personal life, how are they doing and things like that. And when things come up, I then refer them to different resources or professionals that may be able to assist them with the other things going on in their life while we're working on this case. And I always offer to them, if you ever need anything, I have a wide network. I can always refer to you to someone of anything that you need. So clients will always call back and ask for referrals, or let's say they're about to sell their home and they're like, we don't really know a realtor, or we want to buy a home, we don't know one lender. And so they'll call and ask me if I know of anyone. And so it's usually a quick 1 or 2 minutes and I pass along the referral. But I wanted to establish that kind of relationship with my clients early on in my career because one of the things that I also want to do now in the next 10 years is develop a community center that is a part of the firm as well. It's like an extension of the firm where, in my mind, we help the client with their legal process, help them gain lawful status, and then they can transition to the community center where we can help them, if they want to find better job opportunities now that they have lawful status, how can they practice interviewing skills like mock interviews, help them, develop their resume, help them if they need to gain computer skills or English, learn English or different things that will make them better candidates for these job opportunities, help them with those things, but also consider not just, the financial support, but also health, offer them, have fitness classes, have health and nutrition workshops, have financial literacy, a lot of different just support that really gives our clients from beginning to end more of a holistic representation where they just transition from the legal services to the social services with the community center. And so when I was thinking right now, what can I do in terms of developing this community center? One of the things that I thought of was offering that like a subscription plan to the community center so that the community center I don't want it to just be a nonprofit who's going to depend on, fundraising or grants, et cetera, because a lot of times these nonprofits struggle to maintain themselves financially because of some of those requirements, right? And so I kind of wanted to create a community center, but with an entity that really is sustainable. So I'm kind of exploring different things. And that's one thing I thought maybe for my current clients, as soon as we're done with our case, we can offer them a membership or
Oh, I love
subscription,
it. I love it so
to the
much.
access of the community center
Yeah.
to, do all these things, right? And because I thought, I know I financially will not be able to sustain all the expenses of a community center, right? And I thought, well, maybe as a collective, we all sustain some of the expenses that we have that we need for this community center, right? And I thought maybe doing like a $20 subscription, kind of like if you're doing a gym membership, right? And so
That's
now you
it.
have access to this center and all the resources within this center.
And I love that thinking, and it doesn't even have to be a physical space. It could be, and you could do that, or you could rotate physical spaces, but building online communities that are paid membership-based communities is a thing.
Yeah.
And even Alex Sue he works for Ironclad. He does like I think he's like their influencer, like who's a lawyer who works for them. He even posted in his Substack around how law firms building communities, whether that's in your law firm or outside of it, around the people you're providing legal services to. he's predicting that that's something that more and more law firms are going to do. So it's so interesting to hear you say that, because that is, so I just read that in his Substack, and we'll talk off call, Daisy, because I have a lot of different potential technology resources for you to
Oh,
use
that would be amazing.
if you wanted to do an online community, because I'm trying to build one with Law Subscribed too, right? And so
Hmm.
so we should definitely talk about that. So that is really, that dovetails off of something you're already doing, which is community trainings. You have an annual scholarship, and just sort of rapid fire here, like, have those been working for you, and what else are you doing to get clients that works for you?
Yeah, so I think the community engagement workshops are so powerful in both aspects of educating and empowering immigrant communities, and also for generating business, right? When I first started doing the workshops, I learned that through some of the work that I was doing as an intern for the Fair Housing Clinic at John Marshall Law School. And I really loved that aspect of educating and empowering communities. So I wanted also to include that in my practice. So I started doing that early on. And then without even intentionally trying, business was coming through those workshops. And so I saw the benefit in both empowering communities and also growing the practice through those workshops. And so through those workshops, I offer different topics. I do workshops on specific visas and immigration benefits that are tailored towards the immigrants themselves, so that they can identify if they have certain eligibility requirements for certain types of visas or citizenship or the green card process, etc. And then I also, during after those workshops, I'll stay at the location where we are at, and I'll do one-on-one consultations for more specific questions that they might have. And then I also do trainings for advocates who work with immigrant communities. And so that could be a variety of different advocates. It could be social workers, it could be therapists, it could be any other professional who is connected in some way, schools, teachers, counselors, different individuals that are providing support to immigrant communities in one way or another. And so I do trainings for them to kind of educate them on 101 of immigration, so that
Hmm.
if they are working with someone who's an immigrant, they can help inform them if they have certain eligibility requirements to seek immigration relief, or to at least refer them to an immigration attorney. And then also for them to understand the process. So for example, again, on the U visas, I work a lot with therapists who are providing that emotional support to the victim, right? And so I educate the therapist on how they can, how to understand this process. So when the individual is feeling really emotional because of the length of the process, they can let them know that this is normal, that these cases do tend to take a very long time. And then also we can get letters from the therapist providing a diagnosis of the trauma, so that we can use that for our case. So I educate the counselors on what is the process through the U visa, the legal process. And so I train them. And I think that that's so important, because many of these therapists don't know anything about the U visa. And sometimes they may write the letters and they may not be as helpful, because they don't understand what really immigration is looking for with their evaluation. So I do a lot of trainings for therapists. And then now schools, universities, colleges, high schools, if they have students who are undocumented or on DACA, or they're part of mixed status families, right? How can the universities and the schools make their campus more supportive? So it kind of depends. And then also I do know your rights workshops whenever there's a lot of issues with ICE raids. I'll do workshops on know your rights. So if anyone is ever stopped or detained by ICE, what should they or shouldn't they do, and what are their rights? Um, and that's kind of like the community ops and staff trainings that I provide. And then in addition, the scholarship. So the scholarship is geared for DACA students who are in college, because unfortunately they do not have the financial aid resources available to them, and they have college is expensive. And so the scholarship is meant to be able to assist them with paying for their books and other expenses that they may have, or however they want to use the funds, towards either their tuition or their books or things like that. And so the scholarship kind of came about because in order to relieve some of my stress in law school, I started painting. And painting was like my form of therapy for myself to relieve my stress, to unwind, in between my breaks in school. And then I just had so many paintings all over my space that I was like running out of walls. And I was like, you know what should I do with these? People wanted to buy them, but I was like, I don't feel like I'm a legit artist. I don't want to sell them. And then I thought, well, they don't want to take my paintings for free, so I'm not going to keep the money. And I was like, well, might as well put it into this fund and I'll give away the money and I'll donate the money for a scholarship and just create a scholarship through the business. And so I created the scholarship application. I ended up having an art auction when I did my grand opening. So in conjunction with letting everyone know that I was opening my practice, I added the art auction as a component to it. And so I was able to sell all of the art pieces, and all the money went towards this scholarship. And then the following year, I did a reception for the recipient. And then as part of that reception, I did another art auction, so that it's kind of like every time I have an event, I'll add an art auction, and that's how I'm able to raise the funds for that. And so this upcoming year, for the 10-year anniversary, I will be having another art auction in conjunction with the celebration and the reception for the recipients, so that I can continue to raise funds for the scholarship.
Well,
So,
I think that's awesome. And, being able to do something that's using your non-traditionally thought of lawyer brain to do something creative, I really appreciate your ability to do that. And let me know, and I'll share with my community and my followers on social media when the auction is happening, and I'll be happy to promote that. I think that's great.
yes. Thank you so much. It's
Yeah.
just turning a hobby into something that will benefit others, It's just,
It does
and I
good.
thought
It's marketing. It's a good branding
yeah,
thing. Like I'm thinking about now, like how could I use some version of this or sponsor a scholarship or something, because it genuinely does good for somebody in the community and it helps your brand. And when you're a small
yes,
business owner, that's something you got to
exactly.
do.
Exactly. I know that's the beauty about having my own business, right? That I was like, well, I'll just put this scholarship underneath as part of what the business does. I turning a hobby into something contributing and beneficial to the community, and it's part of the business.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Daisy. I just have one more question for you that I ask of all my guests, and that is a hot dog a sandwich, and why?
Oh gosh, you know what? I never even thought, is it a sandwich? I don't think so. I would say no, it's not a sandwich. In my mind, a sandwich is two buns split in half and the hot dog bun is together. I don't
Okay,
know.
then if I tear a bun in half and still eat the hot dog, does that make it a sandwich?
Then I would be like, I don't know that that's a hot dog anymore.
Well, thank you so much again for coming on the show. If anyone wants to follow up with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yes, you could go on my website. So www.daissydominguez.com, and there's a contact information there for you to be able to submit a request that will come directly to me, or you can call me directly at 773-430-7716.
Thanks again so much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, Matthew.
Thanks again to 650 and Gavel for sponsoring this show. The best way for others to discover this show is for you to share it with someone you think would find a value from it. Follow me on LinkedIn, since that's where I'm most active on social media, and click the bell towards the top right of my profile to get notified about all of my posts about this podcast and everything else I think is valuable for you to see. To get in touch, message me on LinkedIn or email kurbis@lawsubscribed.com. All links are in the show notes. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.